A man is trapped in front of a vehicle accompanied by two strangely modified cars. This is the world after the outbreak of nuclear war. The earth is dry and there is no food. Immortan Joe, the only man with access to water, has become a post-apocalyptic ruler, but he is also full of tumors and can only survive with the help of a respirator. His men are all anemic and need a constant flow of fresh blood to stay alive. Max, the only normal man left, is hanging upside down in the air like a human blood bag. Until the day Immortan Joe sent Imperator Furiosa out to fetch supplies. But when Furiosa is halfway with the truck, she suddenly changes course without authorization. Joe's dwarf son sees the scene by chance. When he learned the news, Joe took all his men with him. Furiosa not only took 10 tons of gasoline, but also Joe's 5 beautiful wives with her. Hey, the movie I'm summarizing is called Mad Max. It's a great film. If you're interested in watching it, it's available on HBO Max. But before continuing with today's summary, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and leave a like so YouTube continues to recommend our summaries. Immortan Joe, enraged, sets off in pursuit with dozens of modified cars. They follow Furiosa towards her destination, and Max gets even more upset as he's still trapped in front of the car to continue the blood transfusion for the anemic patient behind him. These white-painted boys were indoctrinated and raised from a young age. Let's call them war boys. In their minds, Joe is a god, like Nux. Joe just looks at him, and he gets so excited as if he had taken a stimulant. He even screams with excitement. Valhalla is a sacred place in their hearts. Only those who died bravely on the battlefield can go there. On the other hand, Furiosa's convoy is at high speed. The boys in front of the car see a flare in the distance. This means Joe has found them. And to make matters worse, their car is entering the territory of the buzzard tribe. Soon, several spike cars are hunting them. They even set a trap on the ground, and a steel cable flipped the lead car, but Furiosa reacted quickly and managed to escape in time. The buzzards are a tribe that doesn't respect laws. They reached the car and threw their spikes to puncture the tires and stop them. The war boys reacted with a lance. One of them fired a cannon and hit a spike car. Furiosa saw the chance and accelerated the car. She used her crossbow and hit another spike car. With this, 2 vehicles were destroyed. But there was a spiked excavator behind them. The attack delayed them considerably, allowing Joe's convoy to get closer. They decided to face the buzzards first. The war boy shaved Max's hair while throwing a lance. Meanwhile, the colleague in front launched a rope with a hook to catch the enemy. Nux took advantage of the gap to knock down and hit, immediately ripping off the skull of the spike car. Soon after, a war boy tried to attack but took a crossbow bolt. He was not intimidated and soon painted his mouth. He was going to the warrior's paradise, Valhalla. Right after, he grabs his exploding lance and jumps, deciding to die along with his adversary. His friends saw his death. It was a moment of maximum glory for him. When the war boy died, his friends went crazy. They threw lances against the enemy in fury. Suddenly, Nux's car is hit. He accelerates and spins, crashing head-on with the excavator machine on the other side. The rest of the team takes advantage of the opportunity and attacks non-stop. After an explosion of fury, the car's saw is destroyed. 3 grenades explode on the ground and the car becomes scrap. The buzzard tribe lost, but a huge sandstorm appeared out of nowhere in front of them. Even the powerful war rig seemed small compared to it. Max, trapped in front of the vehicle, was in panic. At the same time, the war boys turned against Furiosa. They attacked her war rig several times. But by chance, Nux's car got a flat tire. The war boys tried to remove Max's chains and throw him to the back of the car to add weight, but Max is smart. He took the chance and pushed his enemy out of the car. Seeing the sandstorm approaching, Max tried to protect himself inside the car, but Nux locked all the windows. The car was already in the middle of the horrible sandstorm. Max had to hold onto the chains to avoid falling. In the sandstorm, the yellow sand stirs and lightning flashes. Furiosa's war rig, because of its weight, crushed the other cars. The car entered the sandstorm and exploded. This scene made Nux even crazier. He got close to Furiosa's war rig with a boost on the accelerator. Soon after, he filled the gas tank and sprayed silver paint in his mouth. He grabbed a torch and wanted to kill Furiosa. Max stopped him. Frightened, Nux braked, but was hit by the truck coming right behind. The car was shattered. The two were thrown out of the car. When they regained consciousness, the sandstorm was over. Max rose from the sand. He tried to free himself from the chains, but couldn't. Suddenly, he spotted a war rig nearby. He dragged Nux there and found 5 beautiful women taking a bath. They were Joe's 5 wives. Max pointed a gun at them and demanded they help him get free. Then he tries to escape with the truck, but it stops, because the only one who can drive it is Furiosa, as she programmed a sequence. So Max took them with him and escaped the desert. He didn't know that Nux had also infiltrated the car from behind. The war rig went down the valley, but was attacked by surprise by motorcyclists. They wanted the 10 tons of gasoline. The leader of the motorcyclists ordered to blow up the rock to block Joe, who was coming behind. Then he set off in pursuit of Furiosa. They jumped over the surrounding hills and threw gasoline bombs at the war rig non-stop. The war rig caught fire, and Furiosa had to activate the vehicle's front shovel to extinguish the fire with the sand it raised. The fire soon went out. Meanwhile, Joe's convoy was stuck in the rubble, but his war rigs were varied and enormous. He could pass through the obstacle with one of his Bigfoot war rigs. The motorcyclists continued to attack Furiosa's side. After a close-range gunfight, the motorcyclists were killed one by one, but Joe's Bigfoot was getting close. But Joe reached the war rig. He saw Furiosa and was about to shoot when a pregnant woman suddenly opened the door. Joe didn't shoot. She was pregnant with his child. He had to drop the gun, but he wasn't a coward and jumped in front of the carriage. Then, his oldest son launched a hook that grabbed Max's steering wheel. Max's hand was caught in a fatal grip. Joe's wife noticed and helped him cut the chain. The carriage was about to go off track and hit a rock. Furiosa had a brilliant plan and used a wrench to lock the steering axle. The carriage had a dramatic encounter with the rocks, but Joe's wife didn't hold onto the carriage and fell. Joe swerved the car to avoid running over his wife and flipped over in place. But he couldn't save her in the end. And the baby also died. Joe got upset and sent more convoys after them. Max got rid of Joe, but didn't dare to stop. He asked Furiosa where she was going. Furiosa replied, "Oasis. It's where I come from. It could be the last place for humans to survive." Nux goes through a series of ups and downs and loses faith in Joe. At the request of Joe's wife, he decides to go with them to the oasis. Soon night falls. They travel through the pale night air. Suddenly, the war rig sinks into a swamp, but the tracking vehicles in Joe's convoy continued their hunt, and they were still shooting ahead with their headlights. Desperate, Furiosa took her precision rifle and shot out the headlights, leaving the leader blind. They then used the hinge to get the carriage out of trouble. Before leaving, Max also left several mines near the tracks. This action again destroyed a large number of Joe's carriages. A chain reaction completely paralyzed Joe's convoy. This gave Max plenty of time to escape. On the way, they passed through a flooded area and saw many crowmen on long legs, walking through the mud like ghosts. The sight frightened everyone. Max couldn't believe the oasis existed. After a night out, they arrived at the oasis that Furiosa remembered. But wherever they looked, it was still an endless desert. Furiosa got out of the car to check the situation, but suddenly motorcyclists appeared out of nowhere. It was her people. The clan told her that the swamp at the feet of the Crowman was once an oasis. Acidification turned the land into a burning nightmare. Furiosa breaks down in tears. She feels desperate as her last dream was ruined. She says goodbye to Max at night. She will guide her people to find a new place to live. Max accepts, but the next morning, he catches up with Furiosa on his motorcycle. He shows a map with the location of Joe's base. As Joe's forces are busy, the base is more vulnerable. They can use this chance to invade the base. There's enough water there to grow food. The group thinks for a bit and agrees with the plan, so they drive their cars again towards the base. But Joe's men soon notice Max's trail. Joe quickly realizes they want to return. He leads his army quickly to surround Max on all sides. Soon, a fast car chases them. They attack Max non-stop. Even the old lady gets into the fight. The war boy gets in front of the car and sprays gasoline into the engine with his mouth. As expected, the war rig accelerates a lot. He passes and throws spikes behind. Furiosa can't escape, and her tires are punctured. Moreover, Joe's convoy attacks in various ways. The vanguard stays on top of a 5-meter mast and hits Furiosa's war rig from all sides. They launch smoke bombs into the car from the air and even try to strangle Furiosa with a rope. Luckily, the old lady helps Furiosa. The large army behind throws hooks into the car's oil barrels and lowers their plows to create more friction on the ground and make the war rig slow down. But the war rig is strong and well protected. The enemy car that just passed is knocked down by Furiosa's war rig. Max is at the back of the war rig trying to cut the chain. When the chain comes loose, the force is so great that it flips a car. A Vanguard member emerges from the air. He enters the cabin and rescues one of Joe's wives. Joe is happy to have one of his 5 wives back. Several Vanguards invade Furiosa's war rig. Max acts and goes to the front of the vehicle to help. He jumps and knocks down an opponent. During the fight, he slips from the war rig, but Furiosa grabs him by the foot and saves his life. The enemy war rig takes advantage of this chance to approach Max. At the last moment, Furiosa changes direction. This causes the middle car to crush and explode right there. With Nux's help, Max jumps to the other car. He then takes the driver out of the vehicle and takes control. But Joe wasn't easy to deal with either. He ordered his men to pass Max and shoot fire into his car's cabin. With Max in trouble, Furiosa accelerates and destroys the enemy car. At that moment, the flames from the tanker truck were getting higher and higher. Max grabs a man's thick leg and accelerates. Then he jumps to Furiosa's war rig. Right after, the tanker truck explodes. Almost half of Joe's war rigs were annihilated. The war rig goes down the valley with Joe's fleet still in fierce pursuit. He even drives his Bigfoot to the front in an attempt to block Furiosa's war rig. Furiosa passes the wheel to Nux. She's going to kill Joe. Meanwhile, Max approaches the giant sound system and fights with the guitarist. Joe's wife also pretends to surrender and advances to Joe's car. She's going to help Furiosa get into the war rig. But when Furiosa climbs up, Joe's oldest son sees her. Max calls his attention at the last moment. But this guy was very big. Max was a toy next to him and had no chance. While they were fighting, Furiosa approaches from the side and climbs up to Joe's car window. She grabs Joe's respirator with a hook and a chain. She throws the chain into the tire and rips off half of Joe's face on the spot. This kills Joe instantly. Max runs to pull Furiosa into the car. The crowd starts to go for the Bigfoot. Nux decides to let everyone pass first while he drives to block their pursuers. The war rig had passed over a precipice before. The big man who had been knocked out suddenly gets up. He sees his father's war rig being taken and furious rips out the engine. Nux is shocked by the scene. He couldn't believe this big man was so strong. At that moment, the war rig lost its power. He sacrificed his life to stop the pursuers behind them so they could escape. Shortly after, Furiosa led the group back to Joe's base. When the refugees saw Joe's body, the emotions repressed for years finally exploded. The guards ran to tear them apart, but the refugees shouted Furiosa's name. The city guards then surrendered. Furiosa became the new leader. Meanwhile, Max quietly blends into the crowd, leaving all the glory to Furiosa. She will build a new home for the survivors, and so the film ends. Hey, don't forget to leave a like and activate the bell to be notified when I bring new summaries here. So until the next recap.